Good morning, passengers. Welcome to Martel Air. My name's Amanda, and I'll be your pilot for today. We're just beginning boarding for flight number 8 from Sale to Orbost, so grab your seats while I finish up the last steps of the pre-flight inspection of the Cessna Grand Caravan, the pride of the Martel Air fleet. Did I say good morning? I meant to say good afternoon, but my script always says good morning because usually I aim to do these a little bit earlier. But hello to people in the chat. Before engine start checklist. Before pre-flight inspection complete. Parking brake handle set. Electrical switches off. Ignition switch normal. Fuel tank selectors both on. Bleed air heat switch off. Power lever idle. Prop RPM max. Fuel condition lever cut off. Fuel shut off knob push on. Battery switch on. Cockpit lighting set. Wing flaps up. No smoking light on. Before engine start checklist complete. The weather today is once again lovely and sunny, and we'll be cruising at an altitude of approximately 5,000 feet initially, ducking down to about 2,000 or 3,000 feet as we fly along 90 Mile Beach. Your cabin crew today is me, and your emergency exits are located to the back of the cabin where you entered the plane. I also have a door up here by me, and if you see me leave, please follow me quickly. Our in-flight catering services are provided by our wonderful passengers, so I hope you pack something interesting. Engine start checklist. Battery switch on. Beacon light on. Avionics 1 on. Bus bolts check. Emergency power lever normal. Inertial separator handle bypass. EIS readings check. Propeller area clear. Fuel boost switch on. Fuel boost on shown, fuel pressure low not shown, fuel flow 0 check. Starter switch start. Ignition on check. Oil PSI check. NG stable. Fuel condition lever low idle. Fuel flow check. NG climbing. NG stable. Starter switch off. EIS readings check. Generator load check. Battery amps check. Fuel boost switch normal. Avionics 2 on. Nav lights on. Now, I've just noticed one flight sim config error that I hadn't previously been aware of. So I'm just going to hide my screen briefly. You see, the problem is, I was flying a DC-3 earlier, and none of its switches are marked at all. So I had to turn on the tooltips that tell you what the various instruments what the various switches even are. And now I've got to remind myself of where the switch is to turn that back off. I'm sorry for this brief interruption, but that constantly popping up is going to drive me insane. Where is that control? Seems to be... Can't make this easy, can they? Or is that an assistance option? User experience. Nope, 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 nope. This is ridiculous. Why cannot not find this option? And this is your unexpectedly timed reminder that I am not a professional and you get what you pay for. Accessibility, that's it. Instrument name, tooltips, off. There we go, back in the air. Well, back to the taxiway. We are now ready for departure, so please fasten your seatbelts and turn off your devices, apart from those used to watch this stream. Thank you for flying Martel Air, we hope you don't die. Before taxi checklist, taxi lights on, seatbelt lights on, taxi clearance. Actually, let's check the ATIS. Okay, taxi clearance. Select runway. Seven. Martel 08 is taxiing to runway 27. Taxi clearance check. Nav source set. Prop RPM to minimum. Fuel condition low idle. Inertial separated to bypass. Parking brake off. And because this is a services light airport, the taxi pushback method is reverse thrust. Won't that be fun? And of course we have Wing Commander Lamington here to monitor the instruments and keep everything adorable and fluffy. Might not be the most fun time for the people in that building as we buffet them with wind. And there is a reminder just how powerful the reverse thrust on this plane is, which explains why we stop so dang quickly when we use it on landing. Okay, so why is there a forklift on the apron? That seems hazardous. And I'm sure Wing Commander Lamington would not bite me if I did something wrong. He would just, you know, take the controls and do everything right. And I'm continuing to work on being able to do some modifications to the program so that I can give him the collar that he... and collar with the co-pilot stripes that he deserves. But Microsoft Flight Sim is remarkably difficult to get a start with modifying because reasons. Probably being made by Microsoft. Okay. Before takeoff checklist. Parking brake set. Altimeter QNH set. Standby flight instruments check. Fuel boost switch normal. Fuel tank selectors both on. Fuel quantity check. Fuel shutoff knob push on. Standby alternator power on. Anti-ice system, it is 38 degrees here at the moment. Let's call that not required. Inertial separator handle normal. Autopilot setup. Heading mode. Heading to runway heading. There we go. Altitude to initial cruise. Flight level change mode and set to BY. Heading mode engaged. Flight level change mode engaged. Bank limiter engaged. Transponder on Alt. Flaps to takeoff position. West Sail traffic, Martel 08, taking off from runway 27 for east departure. Strobe lights on, landing lights on, seatbelt light on, parking brake release, fuel condition high idle, prop RPM to max. Before takeoff checklist complete. And a ridiculously short taxi in West Sail Airport here because it is tiny. There is another parking area, but that is actually connected to a pair of what look to be grass strips, and I don't think we're having quite that sort of adventure today. Okay, takeoff. Flaps to takeoff position, power lever, smoothly advance. While paying attention to torque limits. And into the air. Looking like a 12-13 knot crosswind as soon as we're in the air, which is always fun. Okay, clear of obstacles, so flaps up. And the difference between my weight and Wing Commander Lamington's weight is also part of the little bit of left roll that we picked up there on takeoff, because when you've got a corgi in one seat and a person in the other, the weights don't exactly match. check the instruments. So, anti-ice system not required. Inertial bypass normal. VY check. Prop RPM set. Power lever set. ITT within required range. And now we start bringing that heading round to get back onto our navigation. Except we will not actually be directly following the direct airport to airport route that is set in the flight management computer, because I have something a little more interesting planned. So the south coast of the Gippsland region has this lovely long beach that you can actually see on the map here. Now this beach is called 90 Mile Beach, and you will find out just what the Australian sense of humour with place names is like once we get there. So this 90 Mile Beach is actually, well, is one of several 90 Mile beaches in Australia. It's just a very poetic sort of name, and it's actually one of the first beaches that I ever went to, which it's certainly quite the sight once you're actually on this beach. And we will be flying the entire length of it, because that is how you make a flight from Sale to Orbost a bit more interesting. And the sightseeing nature of doing this flight all the way along 90 Mile Beach is why, instead of the usual 8,000 to 12,000 foot altitude for the cruise, we're starting at 5,000 and we'll be dropping down to, I think, about 2,000 once we're actually off the coast. Because if you're going to do some sightseeing, may as well be at an altitude where you can see the sights. And the slightly reconfigured default view for looking at the instruments means that I can now actually have people see the map while I'm doing it, instead of them getting my face in the way of it. And that's a useful little upgrade, I think. And there we can see those grass strips that the other parking apron actually points onto, which is rather telling of what Westsail Airport's like. I'm sure they'd be great for if I was flying a World War I or World War II era warbird. That could be fun. Those are meant for grass strips. I've actually been trying a few different aircraft in Flight Sim, as well as the Grand Caravan, which some of them are rather interesting. I have a Fokker triplane, which is not designed to taxi on a modern airport concrete apron. I've actually discovered that it taxis a lot better on grass, because it's, one, over 100 years old, and the levels of control were not quite so precise. Okay, leaving the traffic area, so landing lights off. Seat belts, it's a bit bumpy, we will leave seatbelt light on. I'm just checking our engine temperatures and torque. Lovely. So yes, the Fokker triplane, it's described in the sim as being an airshow replica, which, given that they've gone for the Red Baron's paint markings and a very worn look to it, how much you credit that is up to you. But yeah, you can tell that the way it's designed to taxi is there's a couple of big stout handles, and you get a couple of people to stand at the back of the plane, lift the tail by those handles, and walk it to where it needs to go. And its braking system is called No. The classic, retro aviation thing of shouting "chocks away" when you're about to take off is because the wheel chocks, the thing where you put bricks in front of the wheels so that it can't roll, that's your entire parking brake. And your other brakes are, if you put the tail down on it, which just has a skid instead of a wheel, that'll dig into the grass a little. There's your braking system. Turn the engine off if you want to stop. And the autopilot system in the Fokker triplane is autopilot. I thought your name was Hans. That joke is terrible. You're welcome. And we can see getting into the waters of the Bass Strait, and you can't quite tell that it's all 90 Mile Beach along there, but I will be rambling about the name of 90 Mile Beach a little bit later on, because it's not inaccurate, but it's not accurate in a way that just delights me. But yes, this is one of the first beaches I actually went to, and if you look out to either side, the thing that you can see is beach. It's not, I'm on a beach, and over here is some rocks and some trees and things, and over here is some more rocks and maybe a jetty. No. You look to your left, there is beach. You look to your right, there is beach. And I had a moment of indecision there about if I'm doing camera right or my right, and I think I said one and did both. And Leamington very attentively watching our controls there, which is always encouraging. He is the goodest boy and the goodest co-pilot. But yes, other planes I've been flying this week were the DC-3, which is one of the first... I'm not going to say one of the first airliners, those were going quite a lot, but one of the first good airliners. Also used a lot as the, I'm going to say C-47, I think. It's, if you picture the World War II American transport plane, it's that. I flew that from Canberra to Goulburn, and the autopilot is almost useless. It can basically hold you wings level if you're very careful in setting it up. But, actual visual navigation instead of this GPS nonsense that I have in this plane. So, that was actually a lot of fun. I had to do real navigation by going, getting an actual map open and going, well, I think that body of water there is this lake, and if I keep flying this direction, I should hit a river, which will be the Murray River, and I know that if that was that lake, then I know I need to fly west. Oh, it wasn't Canberra to Goulburn, it was Canberra to Albury, which is why I could follow, because if this lake is this lake, then that river will be the Murray, and I need to follow it west and I'll get to Albury. And then I open up the actual official approach charts for the airport and go, well, the approach path looks like it flies you over this bit of land poking out into the lake that the town's on. So if I fly over that, I should be lined up for the runway more or less. And I didn't crash, and I only got mildly lost. But that was why I had the tooltips for what switch does what, because the inside of the DC-3 is incredibly poorly labelled. And also completely unfamiliar, as opposed to this, which I think I've got more than 60 hours flying the Grand Caravan now, which is actually rather a lot for a video game thing. And we're starting to get the beach of 90 Mile Beach interview. This is, if you've seen the Barbie movie, which I actually found to be delightful, Ken's job is beach. This is the biggest office he could dream of. If your job is beach, this is corporate headquarters. That is the weirdest metaphor I've used in a while. And because we are VFR in pretty much non-controlled airspace, especially with staying at 5,000 feet, I'm having to do very little ATC work unless I actively request for them to keep track of me, but as I don't actually need to do that, I'm not doing that. It's good to know that metaphor made sense. And yes, 90 Mile Beach is a lot of beach. I also did a longer flight in the Grand Caravan just to have more time controlling this thing. I now know what it's like to fly this thing from Canberra to Adelaide, which is about a 4-hour flight. I'm not going to be doing one of those on stream unless there is a particularly good cause. Like, the notion has been raised on previous streams about maybe we'll do the 3 6-hour legs it will take to get this thing to New Zealand, flying from somewhere in Australia to Lord Howe Island to Norfolk Island to the north tip of North Island, New Zealand. So whether that would be 3 6-hour streams, 1 18-hour stream, both prospects are slightly terrifying. But, you know, once this starts to get popular in some way, then we'll see what happens. I'm sure I could keep up my rambling for 6 hours. I would be interested to see what my state of mind would be like after 18. I think that's one of the ones you do where you can set it up so that it's supporting a charity in some way. The charity Mega Stream. I mean, one of the fascinating things about the Cessna Grand Caravan, some of them do come with toilets. This one is not set up like that. The ones of these that do have toilets, though, they're chemical toilets of the basically a camp toilet variety. And, you know, you'll get a privacy curtain. Which, if you're doing a 6-hour flight, you do need something. I mean, Wing Commander Lamington definitely will. That would get awkward. And yes, the 1 week breaks between the 3 6-hour legs would be the usual schedule, except for it going for 6 hours instead of 1 or 2. Which, yeah, I think 3 legs is more sensible. But it being more sensible might actually be a vote for it being an 18-hour stream, and I just land, refuel, take off again. That would be a weird day, and I would need at least the next 2 days off from anything else. But it's going to be a while before we do that. And of course, the hilarious thing about that sort of thing is I'm doing these where the place we land is the place we take off from next stream. So if I fly this thing to New Zealand, at some point I need to fly it back. That could cause us some problems. Okay, we are getting out over the coast now, so let's set up for our sightseeing altitude. I think 2,000 feet sounds fun in this sort of setup. And yes, a max chaos stream is exactly what it would be. I'm sure I would have some sanity left afterwards, if I could be said to have had any at the start. I would actually need to have at least a few spots where I shut off the camera and leave Wing Commander Lamington in charge to visit that small curtained cubicle at the back of the plane. Because I'm not doing 18 hours of flying without having to turn the camera off briefly to wander away, which, let's hear of autopilot and a good dog. So, as we're now out over the water, let's, in fact, I'm going to turn heading mode off and just fly the heading changes manually, even if I'm still using the autopilot for altitude. So, we've got these little strips here, which are not currently part of 90 Mile Beach. You can see how they, all connected at one point. Because all of these little islands along the front edge of the Gippsland Lakes. There we go. That's better. So, just ahead of us here, we have the start of 90 Mile Beach, or at least the one in Victoria. I know that there's at least one in Western Australia, and I think there's at least one other in somewhere in Australia. 90 Mile is just a good name for a beach. And it is just this ridiculous length of a narrow bit of sand stretching out in front of us. Ah, Queensland. Of course the other one's Queensland. It's a beach. Of course Queensland has it. And yes, it is a fun looking tangle of land, etc. It's what happens when you've got a whole area of land that is basically at sea level, and some of it's a bit more at sea level than others, and once the water gets to it, it starts to have a little bit less land, and then it's not above sea level at all. And then here we get the bit where it has been above sea level, but just enough. So flying along 90 Mile Beach, it's, you know, a little bit less straight line follow the GPS than the normal flights, but you can see that 90 Mile Beach is I mean, it's curved, but it's a fairly smooth line, so we're not exactly doing complicated bush flying. So, the fun thing about 90 Mile Beach is that, look, the name is partially accurate. You could start at this beach, the one end of this beach, and walk for 90 miles without running out of beach. In fact, you'd have another 30 miles to go. I measured on the map, 90 Mile Beach, Victoria is 120 miles long. Welcome to Australia. My thinking is that it probably just 90 Mile Beach is a good poetic sort of name. 120 Mile Beach is a bit of a mouthful and less interesting. And yes, it is a lot of beach. It is, as previously mentioned, beach corporate headquarters. Look, more beach. And you can see what I mean about you stand on this beach and you look out and there is more beach. And because it's just gently curving inwards, you've just got this big arc of just more beach. You even get the little parallax effect that, look, more beach. And then more beach. We're set for beach here. So this is actually slightly backtracking because sail is just a little bit inwards as well as being north of the start of 90 Mile Beach, but I think flying the entire length of it is a nice way to look at this hunk of territory. It extends the flight a little bit so that we've got enough time for me to ramble away, and we've just got more beach. And yes, liminal beach space where the beach continues in both directions, but beaches are already the liminal point between the water and the land, so you've just got this thin dividing line of infinity. It's actually a really odd place to stand on, unless you have no context about what beaches are normally like. If you don't know what a beach is normally like, because it's one of the first beaches that you've been to, you just assume that when you go to a beach, what you see is beach. I look out to each side and there's beach. That must just be how beaches work. Going to other beaches later, which were, let's face it, nicer beaches, because this is not a sunny tropical paradise part of Australia. This is deep into the temperate zone. My main memory, other than there's more beach, of being on 90 Mile Beach was seaweed and damp. But it's a lot of beach. And there's some cattle farms. This is Gippsland. There's cattle farms. If you see a farm and it doesn't look like wheat, it's cows. There's probably a few sheep farms, but mostly it's cows. And it's flat. You can just see mountains in the distance. That's basically the distant mountains that we flew from when we left Mount Beauty. Oh look, there's some more beach. Just quickly check the engine. Lovely. But yes, there is flat and flat and flat and just faint distant mountains. And lakes. But where we get up into the proper Gippsland Lakes here, you'll notice that none of them actually connect through 90 Mile Beach, because that would break our 120 mile long 90 miles. The 120 miles of 90 Mile Beach is just the unbroken section, not the you have a little inlet and then there's more beach. All of the Gippsland Lakes are lakes, they are not sea lagoons, except for at one particular spot. So these do, a certain section of these do actually connect to the ocean, and there's actually a town at the spot where you get the entrance from the ocean into these lakes. The town is called Lakes Entrance. We're very creative. And if we look out this side of the plane, we will see blue. There is the blue that is up and the blue that is down. The blue that is down is the Bass Strait. The blue that is up is sky. I think I've introduced you to sky before. We've been there. We've not been into the Bass Strait, and unless I get a float plane version of this, we're not going to. And looking out this direction, we also see the goodest boy. Hello. And we are now brushing up against the sail flight control area again, which is what this blue circle is on my map. But you'll notice that most of the controlled area actually stops exactly on the coast. So as we're flying just off the coast, we're fine. And look, more beach. And you get your occasional little beach towns, because those are, you know, good little holiday spots, and then you got the people running the shops for the holiday spots, and the grey nomads and beach escape retirees and the like. Now, as we chug along at Moore Beach, I think it's time for the usual in-flight entertainment section, which so far has been Banjo Patterson, but I'm going to do one that's slightly different this time. So it's another one of those poems that kind of defines some stuff about Australia in the public consciousness. It's one of the ones that gets quoted a lot. But the thing I learned while getting ready for this stream is that people quoting it start at the second verse usually. So the poem is My Country by Dorothea Mackellar. So it's more recent than Banjo Patterson stuff. I'm just checking if Dorothea Mackellar is still going. No. Okay, so Dorothea Mackellar was 1885 to 1968. I am not a poetry scholar. I am as much a poetry scholar as I am a qualified pilot. Oh look, more lakes. So yes, My Country by Dorothea Mackellar, which is essentially talking to people who idealise the British countryside. And this one gets, like, the second verse especially gets quoted a lot. The love of field and coppice, of green and shaded lanes, of ordered woods and gardens, is running in your veins. Strong love of grey-blue distance, brown streams and soft dim skies. I know, but cannot share it. My love is otherwise. I love a sunburnt country, a land of sweeping plains, of ragged mountain ranges, of droughts and flooding rains. I love her far horizons, I love her jewel sea, her beauty and her terror, the wide brown land for me. A stark white ring-barked forest, all tragic to the moon, the sapphire-misted mountains, the hot gold hush of noon, green tangle of the brushes, where lies lianas coil, and orchids deck the treetops, and ferns the warm dark soil. Core of my heart, my country, her pitiless blue sky, when sick at heart around us we see the cattle die, but then the grey clouds gather, and we can bless again the drumming of an army, the steady soaking rain. Core of my heart, my country, land of the rainbow gold, for flood and fire and famine she pays us back threefold. Over the thirsty paddocks, watch after many days, the filmy veil of greenness that thickens as we gaze. An opal-hearted country, a wilful lavish land, all you who have not loved her, you will not understand. Though earth holds many splendours, wherever I may die, I know to what brown country my homing thoughts will fly. So, there we go. One of those, yes, Australia is kind of intense, and we like it that way. And all of the talk of the sky and the sea and the sapphire-misted mountains seems rather an appropriate setting for reading that one. So the second verse of that especially, I love a sunburnt country, a land of sweeping plains, that has been quoted and modified and punned from here to Ironbark. It is one of the things that is just taken as part of... It's almost part of the Australian metaphor, the way that Shakespeare is part of the English metaphor, which I love that we've got that. It's the sort of thing where once you've got those sorts of phrases getting into the lexicon to describe something, it becomes a bit more real. It's almost like America has the amber waves of grain and all of these sorts of things, and all of the discussions of the various mountain ranges. Like, talking about mountain ranges is very evocative because they're impressive things. They are big and old. And as discussed when we were flying over Mount Kosciuszko, the reason that Australia's mountains are so short is that they are very old. These mountains will have started as big as any of the more normal mountain ranges, but they've just had so much time to wear down that they are not anymore. Oh, we are getting a little bit out to sea. This is what happens when we are doing manual navigation and poetry. Okay, the thought of at some point working out how to do a little sound box, and if I notice something going wrong, I just hit the button and it plays Wing Commander Lamington barking at me. Actually, I've got voice mod going. I think that's the setup for it, and I apparently have something in my eye given how much I've been rubbing it the past little bit. One of the upgrades that I've got for Flight Sim actually has been a high-resolution pack for all of the interior of the cockpit, which I think is almost entirely not coming across on the stream, because switching from 1 or 2K textures to 4K textures for the inside of the cockpit, when I'm then putting it over a stream, is possibly just getting stripped out a little, but I'm enjoying the extra detail. Like, you can see that somebody's been holding the flight yoke and they've just put some extra detail into the wear. a lot of times when you get the wear patterns on textures, they go too far and it looks like it is an utter disaster, not worth flying. But that's the right sort of level. Actually, one of the things I've been working on is with the Fokker triplane, I've been working on a repaint of it that is removing all of the wear from the leather parts, etc. inside to make it look new and like an airshow replica and not like a somewhat cared for museum piece. And also, there are 4 liveries that come with the plane. So this is an add-on one from Got Friends, who are also the group who did such wonderful things as the Got Friends Man's Best Friend mod. There is the Red Baron paint scheme with German tail markings. There is blue and white with a bird of prey of some kind. My brain is saying falcon and German tail markings. A dazzle camouflage, so blocky stripes in ways that get slightly weird to look at, which was very popular in World War I just because it looks really stunning in flight with German tail markings. And one with American interwar tail markings called the trainer variant, which is fascinating to me. So American Army Air Corps, because the US Air Force wasn't formed until after World War II, the interwar or peacetime paint scheme was blue fuselage and yellow wings. Not even gold, just yellow. Like a bit brighter than lemon, which is, a very distinctive paint scheme, but not really what I want to be flying. So one of my retexturing projects has been researching the World War I paint scheme used by the Australian Flying Corps, which was 4 squadrons flying with the British Royal Flying Corps, numbered 1, 2, 3 and 4 Squadron AFC, shockingly. So I've been doing research into the correct colours, where to put them, what other markings, where to put those, what writing, where to put that. So I think next time we are in probably Temora, because that's where one of the big aviation museums with historic warplanes is. I think next time we're in Temora, there might be an episode where instead of hello passengers, it will be hello airshow attendees. And I will show off my 4th Squadron Australian Flying Corps hypothetical livery for a Fokker triplane, which I do enjoy the story that you can get into that of, a plane captured as a trophy and then just repainted in full Australian Flying Corps proper colours. It's got the standard blue, white and red British rondelle, or red, white and blue, depending on which way you're counting. I'm counting these from the outside in for reasons. And they're actually not super bright. They're actually a slightly lower saturation colour, which I actually kind of like, so I've copied that in properly. The version of that rondelle with a kangaroo on it instead of the circle in the middle is late 40s, 50s, I think. We were flying Australian planes with British markings for both World Wars. Just because that actually does tell you whose side we're on. And the Australian declaration of war for World War II was, I have just received word that the British Prime Minister has declared war on Germany, and as a result, Australia is now also at war. That's almost a direct quote. I'm surprised I got all of it, and doing the voice was fun. And just for a change of scenery, we have some more beach. I've been watching some of the other streams and seeing where they have the head tracking set up so that as they turn their head around, you get it moving around the cockpit, and it's all... I think you would get motion sickness from how I move my head when I'm flying. Between having this window full of Microsoft Flight Sim and this window full of OBS, which is the streaming software, and the YouTube chat and stream stats, and the air traffic control window for Flight Sim, and my flight notes, which is where I put the poetry and if I've researched any interesting facts, I'm like, you might notice I'm bobbing around a lot, and that's why, because what I'm doing is over here, you're over here, and then the camera's up here. So I think if I had the head tracker, you would all get motion sickness from my streams. There we go, back properly on the beach now. And you get these lagoons and the parts that were streams when things were starting to connect through, where it was a stream and then it became part of the lagoon with just this narrow little island, and there's just some visual storytelling to that. And we get, so this is into the Gippsland lakes that are actually lagoons, and you can see where this sandbar has built up, and any bits that was going in away from the sea just got filled in with sand, and any bits that were sticking out got washed away. And you just get this lovely, long, continuous beach. It's not a super, like, deep beach from land to water. Like, you know, there's room to set up. I mean, but on these bits, and, you know, sometimes you've got just a little bit of rock, and then on the other side, there's more water, but not beach, because the sand is from being washed in from the ocean. But there are actually some really fascinating physics in how beaches form and maintain their shape, and what can affect those. So what this massive stretch of 90 Mile Beach tells you is that there's this huge stretch of very consistent parallel currents where the water is running along the beach, not really to it, or, I mean, it can't really be flowing away from it, but yeah, it is just flowing across the beach in lovely, consistent, smooth lines. So if you want to sail in one direction, you just need to grab the current. If you need to sail in the other direction, well, I mean, the answer is, if you need to sail in the other direction, you sail out a bit and find the current going the other way, because all of this is cycles. And yes, beach physics and how you modify beach physics get fascinating and weird and complicated, and I'm pretty sure there are multiple PhD theses in what beach do. That was excellent grammar. I can English, as demonstrated by the poetry. But we've got some interesting bits of beach and beach physics coming up just ahead of us, where it's not just a continuous smooth swoop, but it's still the same beach. Because you can see where we've got these little pointy bits. And the town of Lakes Entrance. Oh, I guess I was wrong that there is one little inlet here, just slightly interrupting Long Beach of beach. I don't know if that ruins my point, but I've made the point, and I'm going to claim to have made the point. Yes, beach now with texture. So the pointy bit is where the water currents stop going directly along the beach. Quite likely because you have two currents going opposite directions along the beach. So where they hit each other, they then turn outwards because they can't turn inwards towards the land very effectively. So they turn outwards and start dropping more sand. Because when water slows down, it can't carry as much, which is why you get beaches with that depth and that slope to them, because the more the water slows down, the less sand it can carry, so the more that gets deposited. And you get the sticking out points with no cutoff, where I think that's where two of them are hitting rather than where one is splitting. Because you get more stuff scoured out, and I'm pretty sure that's Lake's Entrance. I will admit that usually when I'm navigating that's Lake's Entrance. I've had some lovely fish and chips down there on that bit. Pretty sure. Yep. Okay, so that YLKE airport, well, tiny airstrip, because there's like two right here, but YLKE is Lake's Entrance airport, airfield, whichever level we're calling it. And here is the almost managing a break, and I think it actually tends to it depends on which imaging service you get and which height mapping. Usually this little corner here does maintain the beach. Like when I was going over and measuring the beach to check my rambling point about the 120 miles of 90 mile beach, the Google Maps images of it are much more beach on this little point here. Oh yeah, there's some weird elevation stuff there. That is Bing Maps being weird. Because of course Microsoft Flight Sim uses Bing Maps because Microsoft. But look, even after that little confusing bit of texture, there's more beach. And yeah, so out in that direction-ish, so this is the Bass Strait, which is the strait between the Australian mainland and Tasmania. At some point, we'll do a flight down to Tasmania and then spend a little while exploring Tasmania. We might go to the little town that is the place I flew to for lunch that one time. There is something weird about having flown to Tasmania for lunch when I was like 12. Somewhere between 12 and 14, I think. Time is fake, but it's around there, and 12 is a good poetic age for this to have happened at anyway. There is a reason for having flown to Tasmania, so interstate across a sizable body of water at 12 for lunch. And it's actually that, as mentioned last stream, I used to live on RAF Base East Sale, and when the transport planes were going somewhere but empty, the families of various people working on related things could get a lift on them. And some of these transport planes from East Sale were doing a flyover of Hobart, the capital of Tasmania, for I think it was Australia Day. So the planes flew from Sale over Hobart to look pretty, and then landed in Strawn on the west coast of Tasmania to refuel. While they were refueling, we got out, had lunch at a local restaurant, and got back on the planes. So, you know, it's not glamorous, especially not in a HS748, but it makes a great story. And just to check, we have more beach. And the navigation path tells me that we have not passed Orbost, which is our destination, which I picked for being right near the other end of 90 Mile Beach. However many miles of it there are. And oh look, there is beach and tree. And a little bit of water in between. Because you get that build-up of sand that makes a mound and then it can be lower behind it, which is just weird beach physics. And now we leave Lamington at the controls briefly, and we just make our way back here. That button. And now we see what the front left passenger would be seeing on this flight. So, you know, a view of where the back of my head would be. Great view of Wing Commander Lamington. And then you got your little window here. A view out at the beach. Oh look, we got a wing that's still attached. Lovely. A speaker there for the sound system, probably for these pilot to passenger announcements, but we can also imagine I'm playing some light opera through there. Feels appropriate to have done some Pirates of Penzance on this sort of flight. I'm not going to attempt to sing Pirates of Penzance because it's been a long day. And none of us deserve me trying to sing Pirates of Penzance at this sort of time. But you know, there we go. And oh look, there's some beach. I've said, oh look, some beach, a lot. And yes, the important views. The attached wings, the wing commander, the beach. He's a good boy. I love the fact that the animation on him includes just the tip of the tail going a little bit, as well as the tongue bumping. Getting him to fit onto the chair such that he's not falling off the front, and such that he's not morphing into the back of the chair took me a little bit of fiddling. And you know, it just means that his tail is just kind of, he's got his own little cutout in the chair to fit it into. It's just it's how you do welcoming, accessible design for the goodest boy. And we've got beach now in a slightly different colour. Mysterious. I'm going to say that that's a big maps thing. But ahead of us, I think I can actually see where the beach ends. That is dramatic. And yes, definitely post-flight treat packs. That's apparently hard to say. Post-flight treat packs for Wing Commander Lamington. That's just, I think that's in his contract. And yes, 90 Mile Beach does end. Not after 90 miles, but it is infinite between 2 points. And if we get into the boundary between mathematics and philosophy that is fractal geometry, most coastlines are actually infinitely long, because fractal geometry is broken, and it's broken in a way that is accurate. And I love that about it. Fractal geometry is so strange. But basically, the shorter a measuring stick you use to measure a coastline, the longer the coastline gets. Because, you know, you can imagine that where we've got all of these lovely swoopy bits in the coast where the beach sticks out into the ocean a bit, if you have too long of a measuring stick, you're just going to skip right from the point of one of those to the point of the next one and miss that curve in between, which is some extra length. And, you know, you'll miss out entire bays and inlets. And look, you use a big enough ruler, you'll miss half the Great Australian Bight, which is a lot of our coastline. And you keep getting a smaller ruler, you get a bigger measurement, until you're starting to measure around individual sand grains. But like you're already having to measure around individual waves and picking an exact moment in time to pick like where along this beach is the coastline. So you're having to pick, like, are we picking the high tide line, the low tide line, the current line, the average line? And where are we putting that? How are we measuring that? Does this pebble moving extend the coastline? This is not a ramble I was expecting to get into. But let's face it, it's me. I should always expect to ramble unexpectedly. And here we've got another one where it tries to not beach depending on your map. But the ones I was checking actually have it continuing through this little attempted inlet. This might be one of those ones where, is this a high tide versus low tide thing? There are some sandbars that are submerged at high tide and so let water through, and are dry at low tide and so extend the beach. Because what this beach actually ends in is, I believe it is this point actually, where we get a cluster of rocks. Because this will be one where the water is coming in rather than going out. So it hits the point and then spreads. I think it's this point. It's this point or the next one. No, it'll be this one, given that Orbost Airport is right there. Oh, right there. And that's kind of why I chose it. Okay, I don't know which of these 2 points it is, but it is one of these two. And it is less sand and more rock, because as the water comes in, it's scouring the sand away rather than depositing it. So the beach ends where it goes, no, this is rocks now. So yes, rocks, the one thing that can defeat beach. But beach can defeat rocks. And yes, there is our tiny little airstrip. Okay, so on this rendition of the maps, which might be different elevation data than the maps I was checking, or might just be, you know, different. It's a different photo set. This is the joys of photo-based scenery, and not all of it has been hand curated because that takes forever. And they honestly, they did America much more detail than they did. Okay, so it will be this next point, because that's definitely looking beach. But you can see this point sticks out a long way. So that is where we've got water coming in and hitting the coastline and just knocking away everything until rock. And when you got rock, that's... Now, I'm not going to say it doesn't wash away, because that's where sand comes from, but it does wash away slower. Yeah, I was thinking rock, paper, scissors, beach, rock, ocean. It's a very wet and gritty version. It's the gritty reboot of rock, paper, scissors. Oh, God. Okay, no, that is the worst pun this stream. We've got to keep score on these things, because I'm going to keep getting worse. Like, unless somebody stops me, and none of you have that power. You have the power to escape my puns, but you don't have the power to stop them. there we go. There is the end of 90 Mile Beach, or at least this 90 Mile Beach. And the 90 mile mark is quite a ways behind us. I should have marked down where the 90 mile mark is and, remembered it. But that would be... Look, I'm more of a cartographer than I am a poetry scholar, but that's not saying much. I'm an amateur / hobbyist cartographer at best. But once we fly over this little pointy bit, and yeah, you can see... In fact, I'm going to take the autopilot off, because we're going to get a good look at the geography / geology there, because it's cool. And yes, I think Beach Rock Ocean is the gritty reboot of Rock, Paper, Scissors. And it's only gritty because the sand is rough and coarse and gets everywhere. Which is a reference that I think of every time I hear or read the word sand. Every time this is what my brain is like, I'm stuck in here. Sort of maneuvering, we actually want to be slowing down a little bit. If we do this sort of stuff too fast and there's nice thick low air, we might do a mischief to the wings, which would be unfair to Wing Commander Lamington while he's on board with us. We've got to keep the doggo safe. There we go. And it's an even better view because we're looking out over Wing Commander Lamington's head. And in fact, just looking at his instruments instead. But you can see where there is just rocks on the end here. And the beach just stops. That's because that's where the sand just gets knocked away by the incoming currents, and look, you get more beach afterwards. So, like, beach is not defeated, it's just interrupted. This is the lone point of defiance from rock. But there is our airport / airfield. Now I will be coming in on runway 25. Orbost traffic, Martel 08, 5 miles east, 1,600 feet, inbound to land, runway 25. And not doing the GPS approach and all of that fancy stuff for this. We're just gonna do a nice standard hand-flown approach. Attention passengers, we're now approaching Orbost, and I've kept on the fastened seatbelt lights, which means I'd like you to keep your seatbelts fastened. Enjoy this riddle and more as we come in towards landing, and thank you again for flying Martel Air. We hope you don't die. Approach checklist. Seatbelt lights on, landing lights on, fuel tank selectors both on, fuel condition high idle, prop RPM to max, flaps to approach position, inertial separator to bypass, and brakes off. And just doing that while doing a quick low altitude holding circuit, roughly. Not doing a full formal circuit because this is country general aviation, not a major airport in an A320. And the winds are looking a little variable and spicy, so I need to make sure I'm actually paying attention and not getting distracted by rambling. Wouldn't that be new? Yeah, that wind's certainly moving very interestingly, because we were flying over the coast, and that thing that the water was doing, I think the air might be doing some of it too. Water, like big expanses of water, give you weird expanses of wind because there's nothing to block it. Like here, it hits trees, it hits hills, it hits mountains, it hits cows, and that slows the wind down a little. Here, like behind us, over the water, it hits water, moves. You got to wave. Final approach checklist. Autopilot off, seatbelt lights on, flaps to landing position, and controlling the airspeed. We are a little high, but we can deal with that with a little side slip. Okay, I've been watching a few bush pilot videos lately because somebody recommended me a channel that has a lot of fun with those. So you know, this is safe, it's just not formal. Oh great, and we're coming in with a tailwind. This might not be my best idea. Like, ideally, I would go around and land with a headwind, but we can do this. It's fine. And look, we're even down onto a proper sort of approach angle. This is a tiny... this is smaller than Mount Beauty. It's amazing. Nope, 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 nope. Procedure, power lever advance, laps to approach position, airspeed above 80, and flaps up at 300 feet, flaps retracted. Orbost traffic, Martel 08 going around. We'll be landing on the opposite runway. So that is what we call a go-around. I was not going to be landing on the middle of the runway, and well, at Canberra Airport, that amount of being off the centre line would be fine. At Orbost single airstrip, that amount off the centre line is called missing. And I don't want to miss the runway. That would be dramatic in an unpleasant manner. I don't think flight number 8 having our first crash would be quite the vibe we're going for. But doing our first go around on stream, that's fine. That's just showing that we are paying attention to safety. And that's one where I definitely wish I had the button to make Wing Commander Lamington bark at me, because I'm pretty sure he would have been the one telling me to go around with just barking. But let's try that from the opposite direction with a headwind this time, and knowing my luck, the wind will have turned by the time we get there. Okay, flaps to approach position, Speed coming back. Runway definitely in sight. Speed coming back more. Orbost traffic. Martel 08 is on final runway 07 to land. Yep, there we go. Headwind coming in this time. And flaps to landing position. Lined up. Not even using glide slope assistance on this, which I probably could with the fancy GPS setup, but this is the sort of airfield that you fly into by hand. And it's good to keep your skills sharp with this sort of thing. So, you know, we've got a successfully executed go-around, if not a successfully executed first landing. But the whole reason that you have the procedure of the go-around is if you're not sure about the landing, you just don't. You go away from the ground and try again. Landing is basically the most dangerous part of flying because usually you're trying to stay away from the ground. For a landing, you're trying to hit the ground, but only just. Like, not hitting the ground at all is easy. Only just hitting the ground, that's where actual piloting comes in. This is better. Little bit of crosswind. Lot of mud, but this one, and didn't even need to use the reverse thrust. And now we use the side braking, and this thing turns mighty tight when you use both the nose wheel and the wheel brakes. And then because I was using the wheel brakes, it also stopped. That second landing, I'm actually proud of that one. That one was soft. Probably because I was concentrating more, having screwed up the first one. But, you know, learning experiences. And doing a fully manual landing was fun on this tiny, tiny strip. I don't know if it's actually, if the strip is wider than our wingspan. Because as previously covered, this thing's actually fairly sizable. Orbost traffic, Martel 08 is clear of the runway. And there's our refueling station, but we don't need that just yet. I think we will park just over here where it's clear. Lovely. I did not do my full after landing checklist because I was talking, to be quite honest. I am working on refining these checklists, but we've got the important parts of it done. Attention passengers, this now concludes our flight from Sale to Orbost via the potentially named 90 Mile Beach, and we here at Martel hope you've enjoyed your time in our tiny sky bus. Please wait until I've opened the door and you can calmly deplane in an orderly fashion. Our baggage handling services will be provided by our wonderful passengers, so thank you for not leaving any of your luggage behind. Any personal belongings left behind as you leave the plane will be assumed to be a present to the pilot and enjoyed thoroughly. Thank you for flying Martel Air. We hope you don't die. Isn't that right? Shutdown checklist. Parking brake. Set. Get off the toe brakes. Power lever. Idle. Bleed air heat switch off. Temperature range. I need to cut back to low idle, which was in the before taxi checklist, but tiny airfield we accelerated some checklists, which is bad practice. Do not accelerate or rhyme your checklists. That was a bit of poor airmanship on my part, but we didn't crash. So, temperature range stable at minimums. Prop RPM to feather. Fuel condition cut off. Inertial separator to normal. Lights off. Fuel boost off. NG 0 check. Avionics 2 off. Avionics 1 off. Battery off. Fuel tank selectors both off. And yes, getting to reuse the airframe multiple times, that's the sign of good landings. Any landing you can walk away from is a good one. Any landing you can reuse the plane afterwards is great. So, you know, that was one not a landing and one great landing. It was also quite a soft and quiet landing, which I'm rather pleased with. I need to keep doing those. But there we go. That gets us to the end of this week's stream, which is a little bit later in the day than usual, just because I had a busy morning and afternoon. And managed to get through all of it, which is nice. But there we go. We are now landed at Orbost, tiny airstrip. And we've got a tiny little plane there and a tiny little plane in the background and an actually reasonably sized plane over there. And a fuel truck, because those are important out here. So it'll be interesting to see where we end up going from here. I'm thinking of actually making our way back up towards Canberra, which is basically what I consider my home base airport, because it's where I do a lot of my flying out of for this sort of thing when I'm not streaming. So we'll see where that gets us and what route we take back up there without repeating anything. So, thank you all for flying with us today and hope to see you next time.